Hello humans, welcome to the M Word, the Manx Sports podcast brought to you by Martin. That's me.
And Matt.
That's him. Hello Matthew.
Martin.
We're going straight into it today.
Yep, sounds good.
The intro is, maybe on laziness on my part, is Billy Mills winning the 10,000 metres in 64. Our guest Andy Fox, I don't know whether you remember that particular...
I don't remember it, but I know of it because obviously Ron Clark was one of my big heroes as a youngster, as a runner, and he got the bronze medal, and that was his only Olympic medal in that particular race. And I argue that it was a travesty because he was one of the great distance runners, but he never won an Olympic title.
Right, okay. Well, the part of the reason of picking it was we used it for the intro for Keith, and obviously you know Keith, and when we spoke to Keith, he talked about really he only ever started running because of a phone call you made to him to say come down and participate. And again, when we look at our podcast and chatting to people and people that help with grassroots, that kind of just probably changed the trajectory of his life. That one phone call, you went out your way to get him involved. So because it was him, you obviously did a lot of 10,000 meters, which we'll get into. So we just thought it was quite a nice tie-in to that. So thanks for joining us today. Like we ask most guests or all our guests when we kick off, is whether you're a come over Manx, or Manx to the Hills.
I'm a come over.
Right, okay. So where were you?
I actually had that shouted at me at a prize presentation when I was going out with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, and I'd come over to the island and I ran in the Millennium Way relay, and the guys who I was running with knew that I was a decent runner, and we won the Millennium Way relay that year, and I went up to get my trophy with the team, and I was greeted with "come over," being shouted.
I think you're long enough now to be considered a man.
Yeah. I'm a stopover now. So.
Yeah, all right, yeah, okay. Yeah, maybe we need to add that to the question. So your early years, where were you brought up?
I was born, well, my family are all from Northamptonshire, from Northampton itself. But I was born just over the border in Leicestershire, in a place called Market Harborough, and the family lived in a village called Kibworth. And my dad was basically a gas fitter and was working his way up. Well, it wasn't British Gas then, it would have been Midland Gas or whatever, working his way up the promotion ladder and becoming like managers of different areas. And hence we moved around quite a lot when I was a kid.
Did your parents do much sport? Were they an influence in that area?
Yeah, not really. My dad was definitely a runner when he was younger and when he was in the army, and had a few decent results. But it's cross-country type stuff. It wasn't track or anything like that. But when he left the army, he did about a year where he ran for the club at Northampton. But then after that, work took over, because I think you're probably back now in the late 40s, early 50s. So, obviously people worked pretty hard back in those days, rationing and all that stuff still being around. My mum, she played sport at school, but again, as soon as she left school, when she matriculated, from the point of view she could have gone to university, but there was no money in the family or anything like that, so she had to go straight to work. So basically, they're a working family basically. But they were very much involved in youth work. My mum a bit later in life got a job as a careers officer in schools, and they both worked in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts. And then also my mum worked later on in working with the Brownies and young people in those areas. So they did an awful lot with young people, but not necessarily sporting themselves. They did lots of walking, hill walking, stuff like that. Not organised sport, really.
And what's your first recollections of your interaction with sport?
My first recollections of sport is every day at school, playing football in the morning on the yard, playing football at break time, football at lunchtime, football after school, having tea, going out playing football football.
Any good at football is the question.
Not particularly. I could run around a lot, could get in the way. I played for the school team a few times, but I wasn't a regular over the years. But basically, as a primary school kid, we were just mad playing football all the time. We lived in a place at the time called Barmouth on the west coast of Wales, and that's where most of my primary school years were. And Dad was by then the manager at the gasworks and the gas showroom in Barmouth. And basically, it was an idyllic place for a kid to grow up, a kid who loved the outdoors. So, we'd be up in the hills, we'd be on the beach, we'd be up to no good all over the place,
right,
as well as playing football whenever we had the chance. And of course, this is probably, we're talking when I was about 8, 9, 10 years old. So this is like within 2 or 3 years of England winning the World Cup. So in our eyes, England was the best place to be if you're interested in football, because you're obviously going to be a professional footballer if you were English, because England was so good and all this. Obviously it wasn't the case. None of us became professional footballers. However, we had a great time.
What about the athletic side of things? When did that start coming in?
That didn't start till secondary school. We moved from Barmouth to a place called Newtown in mid Wales, and it's probably the closest big town actually is Shrewsbury to it, really. Shrewsbury or Oswestry over in Shropshire. And I had no idea about this. My parents had no idea about this. We moved to this place, Newtown. It was a development town, and it was a promotion for Dad. And the high school, Newtown High School, I went to the primary school there for a short period of time, then on to the high school. They hosted the Welsh Schools Cross-Country Championships every year. They were the host school, and they were for many, many years. And I had no idea about that. And the teacher there, I don't remember his first name. His name was Mr. Evans. We were all petrified of him. But basically, I look back now, and that's where my grounding as an athlete came, because we used to have PE lessons and games lessons, as kids do now. But for a period of time, our PE lesson was a lesson called running round the school, which was basically around the school. It was probably about a mile or a mile and a half maximum, maybe less, I don't know. And they used to run a time trial every week in that lesson for about 6 weeks. And of course, we all got quite fit. And then in our games lessons for about 4 or 5 weeks, we would do cross country, which was basically a race around the cross country course. Then we would have the school championships. Then we'd go to the county championships. And of course, eventually you'd go to the Welsh championships. Well, in year 7, first year, I got involved in all of that. I found that I was getting better, because I wasn't the best, but I was getting better over the weeks. And in the cross-country championships, I came second in the school champs. And that's the last time I came second in the school championship cross-country. After that, I always won them against the older lads. But basically, that's where it got started. I kind of realised that I wasn't going to be the best footballer or cricketer or rugby player, although being quite tall, I was always going to be in the rugby team in Wales, obviously. But I could do well at cross country, and that's kind of where it all started.
Was that coming more from you were enjoying the sport, or as a kid you liked winning, that made you carry on?
I liked winning. There's certain runners who I describe as kind of adventure runners. They do it for the adventure, for the fact that they like to go out and test themselves and, how many marathons can I run? I would never be able to run 19 marathons in 19 days like Christian. But I'm sort of I'm of the ilk where I have to go out and try and run as fast as I can run. So, I might come 55th, or I might come 5,000th. But if I can say to myself that was as fast as I could run, and I'm happy with what I've achieved.
And are you competitive by nature?
Yeah. We have family quizzes now, Zoom quizzes. I came equal last night because basically it was a load of stuff I didn't know anything about. That's my excuse. But usually I have to try and be, if not winning, I have to try and do well in them. So I am a little bit, obsessed with trying to do well. That's always been, something that drives me on. Really.
And is that at that age then, when you're running, you look back, was that you? Do you think you matured before others of your age, or you just had a big engine, or just trained harder, or just
well, there was no training. I didn't until 1976 when I finished my O levels.
Oh right, okay.
Basically, there was no club. Wherever I lived in Wales, these are quite rural areas. There was no club. The best I ever got was a football club in Newtown. We had a football club, our estate, but there was no club. There was no training. So basically, it was all what you did yourself. I mean, we used to play athletics at Newtown. Basically, we would run 100-meter races, 200-meter races. They weren't 100 meters. It was like there was this play that went through our estate, and there was one straight. It's probably about 60 meters long. So that was 100 meters.
Right, yeah.
800 meters was to run right to the end of the pathway, which is probably further than 800 actually, and then turn around and run back. And we used to run races, and that's what we used to play. No training as such. The only training, I suppose, was basically what the PE teachers got us to do in our PE and games.
Yeah.
Of course, this school had a reputation for producing good cross-country runners.
What was the reason for that?
They held the school, the Welsh Championships there.
So just therefore came a focus.
It was a bit of a kudos thing for the school, and they wanted Montgomeryshire, which was the county, which is quite a small county, but they wanted Montgomeryshire to do well, and obviously Newtown High School students to do well. I mean, the end of that kind of story is 1974. I ran in the Welsh Schools Championships, and I came sixth. I come third in the county, and I should have won that. I still know about it now. You learn lessons, don't you? I went home for lunch.
45 years later.
Mum gave me beans on toast. Massive beans on toast meal. And about an hour and a half later, I ran the county cross-country championships, and I lost in the sprint finish, and I had stitch for about the last mile. And it still annoys me now. And my mum was mortified afterwards. But,
I didn't need to ask that competitive question 2 minutes ago. I think I've just figured that out. Yeah.
And in the Welsh camps, obviously, those guys were nowhere near me. But,
Yeah.
But I'd rather be sixth in the Welsh champs, to be honest with you. That was, for me, that was a big thing.
Yeah.
But it all stalled at that point for me, really, athletics a little bit.
How come?
We moved.
Right.
We moved at the Easter. So basically the Welsh champs were in about March or late February, schools champs. Then we moved to Colwyn Bay. And I was a fairly quiet kid, really. I think many people find that hard to believe now, but anyway, I was a fairly quiet kid, a bit shy, didn't push myself forward, and so I didn't get involved in any of the athletics that summer at school. I just kind of watched the other kids doing it.
Yeah, right.
Because no one knew that I was a decent runner or anything like that.
Was that because the kind of ethos that you were saying from your previous school was because of that kudos they had? They were always kind of the programs or what courses or classes they had was running orientated, whereas you've gone to this new school and it's completely different.
Yeah, you're right. The school that I went to was basically a football school. It was all about football, and I was decent enough, but I wasn't that good. In the summer, basically you did athletics in your PE lesson. So you did that, and I did reasonably well in the PE lesson, but I never pushed myself forward. Nobody ever asked me to. No one ever said you should try this or whatever. So I didn't. Then in the autumn that was the end of year 9. So at the beginning of year 10, basically I got involved with the rugby team, and I got to know the PE teacher who took the rugby team was Mr. Cuffin, and basically a few of my mates, got to make a few friends. I didn't make many friends when we first moved to Colwyn Bay. I didn't really want to go there. I was planning all the summer holidays on my bike to ride back to Newtown to be with my mates. It never quite happened, but that was my plan. So in the autumn, I got to know Mr. Cuffin. A few of my mates found out that I was a decent runner, or had been. And so on a particular day, I remember Mr. Cuffin finding me in school. This is probably now about February, saying, do you want to run in a cross-country race? So I said, yeah, like this. And he said, right, you need to get your kit. So I said, why? He said, it's this afternoon. So I borrowed kit off people because I couldn't, it was a long way home. I couldn't just go home. You couldn't ring your parents then. They couldn't come in, or if they're at work. So I borrowed kit off people. I borrowed a pair of trainers, and I ran this race, no training or whatever. And I was just in the leading pack. And we're coming back with probably about a mile to go, going through a load of muddy puddles, and a trainer came off in the puddle. Of course, it wasn't my trainer. So I had to go back and find the trainer, which wasn't easy because it was really deep, found the trainer and then finish. But I managed to come about 6th or something like that in that race, qualified to run for the area in the county championships, and then qualified to run in the Welsh schools. Now, I didn't run particularly well. I was the younger of the age group, but it got me back into, this is a guy who runs cross-country, and school knew that. And to be fair, Mr. Cuffin needs a mention because basically he took me to races, and he kind of, kept me going, if you like. And then 6th form, it kind of all blossomed, really.
Yeah, so when you went to 6th form, and obviously you eventually had a career in teaching, was that something on your mind when you went to?
No. 6th form was, 6th form. Well, there wasn't a plan really. That was the plan. 6th form, I ran. Another ridiculous story. I ran steeplechase. I was supposed to run. I won the 1500 when I was in year 10. Against the year 11s in the school sports. And I was supposed to do the 1500 in the area sports. But they decided at the school they were going to pick the guy from year 11 because he was ill on the day of the school sports. So they reckoned he'd be quicker in the area sports. Now, as history proves, that wasn't the case. But anyway, that's what they believed. So I was told I could do the steeplechase. This is a week before the steeplechase.
Having never done one before, I assume.
Before. So I could hurdle though, because I'd done a bit of hurdling at school.
Before we go into that story, can I ask a question about the steeplechase? Where it comes from to have randomly, a couple of hurdles and water around? Where's the backstory?
It's basically the cross country race on the track.
Oh right, okay.
In the Olympics, they used to have a cross country in the Olympics, going back to 1908, 1912. 1920, the early Olympics. And basically the cross-country race, there was a steeplechase as well as a cross-country back in those days. But the cross-country was dropped from the Olympics, and the steeplechase kind of took that role. Because if you think about cross-country, you think about running on the road, basically you're running a pretty consistent, fast pace all the way. You think about cross country, you're going up hills, round corners, down hills, through rivers. So it's stop and start. And the steeplechase is the same. Every hurdle, you slow down into it, although you try to keep the pace going. And then you pick the pace up afterwards. So basically there is a stop and start element to the steeplechase. Different form of running, basically.
Just when you were being asked about the steeplechase, most of those your racing you've mentioned there were cross country. So were you just primarily doing cross country before this, or were you just doing athletics as a whole, and racing?
I did athletics as a whole. Basically, I was a pretty good long jumper, triple jumper, and I could high jump reasonably well also. And I could sprint, I was quite fast, and I could hurdle. So they sort of said about the steeplechase, and I kind of thought, well, yeah, why not? So I gave it a go. Guys who run the steeplechase, 1500 steeplechase, I think I ran about 4:56 for the first one I ran. And then the next year, still wasn't training. The next year when I was in year 11, I won the county championships at steeplechase, went to the Welsh champs and came third, around 4:37, which is a decent enough time. I mean, guys run a lot quicker than that.
Sorry, what's the distance for this your normal steeplechase?
For under 17s, it's 1,500 meters. Then in the under 20 age group, it's 2,000. Although today sometimes they run 3,000, but 2,000 used to be the championship distance, and then for seniors it's 3,000.
Okay.
So that's summer of 1976. Obviously there was the Olympics in Montreal, so I was watching that. There was the fact that I come third in the Welsh champs. I'd done me GCSE, O levels, and the decision was, well, if I get back to school, I'm going to sort of push my running. I'm going to what's the point me playing rugby? I'm built like that. I basically get hammered every time. Although I loved playing rugby, but I wasn't I wasn't robust enough really. But I could run, and the PE teachers, when I went back to school, said that I could train in PE lessons unless I wanted to do the actual sport that they were doing at sixth form. So that summer, I just basically trained. So I basically trained 40, 50 miles a week all summer. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just going out for a run. Then that following autumn, I ran well over cross country at school and area championships, county championships, and then the following spring, I came 8th in the Welsh champs again. So I was kind of getting back up there in Wales. And then the following summer, I won the Welsh Schools Championships as a year 12, in all year 13s. So, but the thing that irked me was I never got selected to represent Wales at anything. So there's a little bit of a sort of dichotomy between North Wales and South Wales, a little bit. Plus also there were maybe faster lads down south, I don't know. But obviously I hadn't seen them because I'd beaten them all in the schools. So in 78, I decided I was going to overcome that issue. And I went to the 3A's championships, the Welsh 3A's championships, and I retained my Welsh schools title and I won the 3A's championships. And that summer I got selected for Wales 3 times. And then in the winter, I'd come 4th in the Welsh champs and I'd been selected for Wales under 20s as well. So I suppose my name was getting a bit more known, shall we say.
Yeah, and how was that representing Wales?
Yeah, it was a bit weird in a way because if ever England played Wales, and of course you had the home internationals then and stuff like this, not just in rugby but in football. So I would always be, I'm English basically, as simple as that. So I would always be particularly vehement that England, should win and hammer Wales and all this sort of thing. But I was proud to represent Wales because obviously it's where I went to school and it's the people that I was working with. And by then a club had started in Colwyn Bay. In the summer of 1977, a club started. It wasn't particularly, there wasn't a lot of expertise in the club, but there were people going out of their way to help people like me get to races and stuff like that, which was good.
That's what I was going to ask there, was before you said that, you were just going out and running and not having any training. So presumably even to get to a Welsh team did you have any training at that point, or was it still just, you were just running in a sense?
Yeah, obviously I won the Welsh Schools steeplechase, and I basically ran a few sorts of sessions that I knew other people were doing, because by this stage I'd realised there's a thing called Athletics Weekly, and I could buy that, and there was sessions in there. Right. So I was kind of making things up from what I could read and find out from other people. And then in the summer of '77, the club started. A guy called Richard Llewellyn-Eaton set the club up, and then another guy called Arthur Bebbington. They both started to look after the athletes and basically started to run a few more sessions. And so come 1978, I would say I was a more complete athlete, really, in the sense that I was exercising more of the energy systems in my body rather than just going out running and being very good aerobically, but not so good otherwise. Yeah.
So just reading through the notes here, you mentioned one of your big aims was the Welsh AAA under-20 title.
Yeah, that was 1978, yeah. So I went down there, and basically I was the only North Walian in that race. And there were quite a few guys from South Wales, names that I knew, who were, you know, well-known runners. A couple of people who you know fancied their chances over the steeplechase, so we're going to give it a go as well. And it's one of those, you have days where everything just goes, clicks and just goes well. And I remember it really well because it rained just before the start of the race, and I'd been warming up and feeling okay. And it started to rain, and it was quite a warm evening, and I didn't mind the rain because I didn't like the heat particularly. There's a bit of a story about that in 1995 in Gibraltar, which we might come on to later on. But anyway, it just cooled me down. I just thought, this is good. This is going to be good for me. And on the third lap, I just ran away from everybody. It was just one of those. I didn't even feel like I was trying. It just sort of happened. And yeah, I had a really good run that day.
You don't get many days, you know, we both do a bit of sport. There's not many of those days you get those, but they are amazing when
it's just so easy. And you just think, why can't it be like this all the time? You know, you're struggling to keep the training going, so next time it might be like that. Oh, it isn't. Oh, well, maybe it will be next time. You know. But you do have those days more than once, but you know, that was one of them. It was really good. Yeah.
So you mentioned you obviously went on to uni and in Little College in Liverpool. Again, was there a focus there, sort of moving slightly away from sport to, again, career-wise? What was going through your mind at that stage?
Yeah, well, basically, I'd not really concentrated on my studies as much as I should have done in my year.
Your ex-pupil won't like to hear that.
Year 13. Yeah, I mean, I did okay in my A-levels, but I didn't do as well as I should have done. So I didn't get my first choice uni. I went to a college of higher education in Liverpool, which was affiliated to Lancaster University. The place doesn't exist now. It's been knocked down. City of Liverpool College of Higher Education, but it was a pretty good place for lots of things, really. And I put a lot of pressure on myself when I was a junior. No one put pressure on me. My parents never expected anything of me. I think they were very proud of all the things that I achieved as a junior athlete, but they never pushed me. I realized a few things, really. One thing I realized was I set myself up to win this race, this Welsh 3A's championships. And you know, I didn't have a plan what would happen after that.
Yeah, right.
So I won that race, and then I went to an international at Meadowbank, and I ran really well in that and won a bronze medal in an international with England, Scotland, Wales, and West Germany for some reason. I don't know why.
Obviously.
So anyway, I was third in that race, and I could have easily come sixth or seventh. So I was really pleased. So that was good. But after that, I ran out of steam. You know, I basically shot my bolt because everything was all about this one race, and then I hung on for another one, and then after that, it all fallen apart.
Do you think that pressure, when you look at pressure and putting pressure on yourself, because I think we all do it to some extent, do you think that's not you, but generally people who do that, do you think that's the competitive element, applying pressure internally?
Yeah, I think so. And you enjoy the success when it's there, but occasionally the proverbial hits the fan and you realise I'm struggling now.
Yeah, yeah.
But you're still committed. So I was still committed to going to Crystal Palace to run in a race. I was committed to go and run South Wales against the Army and the RAF representing Wales and stuff like this. And I knew I was going to be dragging my body round over these hurdles, and it was not going to be very good, really. But I just had to do it. Anyway, so there was that element. And the other thing that hit me, I mean, when you're a youngster and you're having quite a lot of success, you kind of feel, I'm going to go to the Olympics, I'm going to do this, do that. And I realised very quickly that summer, I was racing against a guy called Colin Reitz, who went on to win a bronze medal in the World Championships at athletics over the steeplechase. And there was another guy who I raced, Colin Reitz didn't run in Meadowbank, which is probably why I got the bronze. Graham Fell ran. He was the, if Fell and Reitz had been there, I would have been blown out of the water. But Graham Fell ran. He was another English runner, both in the same club, by the way. Right. I think that always annoyed Graham Fell, because Reitz was a little bit quicker. Right. And then Fell went and took up Canadian citizenship. But he also won a bronze medal at the World Champs. But the reason for the story is basically these guys were running. I mean, I was running sort of just under 6 minutes for 2,000 steeplechase, which is decent. But these guys were running 5:38, 5:42, oh, right. Okay. And they were in another league compared to me, really. And so, I put all this pressure on myself, and I was still quite early in my sort of experience of running sessions and stuff like this. But I went to uni, and I liked to be social. And I had a good time at uni. I still did a bit of running. I went back to playing football and rugby and hockey and badminton and other stuff. Still did some running. I still had a few decent results in college athletics. But basically, I took a bit of a backward step.
In regard to doing history and geography there, what made you decide to do that?
I was good at them. Basically, I took English, history, and geography at A level. My English didn't go that well at A level, but I got enough to get to uni. And I did a history, geography joint honours degree. It was quite hard work, but on the other hand, I enjoyed those subjects, so they were the ones for me to do. I took a coaching qualification in 1980, so I'd have been 1920, and started doing a bit of coaching in the holidays when I went back home from college. And when I finished my degree in 1981, had to make a decision, what was I going to do? I'd applied for a job with an oil company, and I didn't hear from them. I'd applied to do a PGCE teaching qualification. So I thought, well, I'll go and do the PGCE. I am interested in teaching. I'm not sure if it's for me, but it might be.
Yeah, right.
And if the company get in touch with me, well, maybe I'll go and do that job. I'll see.
Yeah.
And, I started doing the teacher training. Pretty early on, they chucked us straight into teaching practice. It was like babes to the slaughter, basically. It was like sink or swim.
Right.
I think I just about kept my head above water. Finished the teaching practice, went into lectures, etc. And then I got an offer of a job with Robertson's Research, the oil company.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I thought, well, they're obviously interested in me, but they'll still be interested in me next summer. I've started this course now, so I think I'll finish it. I wasn't overly enjoying it at that time, but I thought, no, I'm kind of someone, if I start something, I like to finish it. So I decided I was going to finish the PGCE. And my second teaching practice was absolutely brilliant, and I decided this is what I want to do.
Yeah, right.
So that's where it came from. And I think a lot of people saw that in me. I didn't see it in me till I actually went and did it, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, we mentioned there a couple of years earlier you've been doing a bit of coaching courses, and again, to me, it's that same thing, isn't it? To learn to then teach other people. So it's kind of, it seems like it was in the DNA anyway to do that.
Yeah, I think so. And it's kind of I always enjoyed working with people. As I say, very social. In college, in a way that wasn't necessarily good for my running, but it was good for being in the football team or the rugby team. But I always kept in touch with the running, and when we moved, well, it wasn't when we moved back to Ireland, but when I got my first teaching job, the first thing I did was actually decide, well, I'm going to start running again. And I joined, I was working in a place called Deeside, which is in North Wales, just over the border from England. And everyone thinks North Wales, that'd be a lovely place to work. Well, this was actually Shotton, where the steelworks had been closed about 2 years earlier.
Right.
So this was a deprived area of Wales. And I've never had, the experiences I had at Deeside High School meant that teaching on the Isle of Man was an absolute
walk in the park.
Absolute pleasure, yeah. The vast majority of people and young people on the Isle of Man, parents, were brilliant to work with at Deeside High School. It was a lovely school, very, very hard-working staff, brilliant people working there, but you were working with some very, very difficult individuals who were going through very difficult times.
Yeah, right.
It was a good place to start your career, really.
Yeah, I suppose it maybe gives you an appreciation, doesn't it? Having experienced something like tough, I suppose, if that's the word early on, that you appreciate perhaps when you come to the Isle of Man, and
very much so. And I kind of joined Deeside Athletics Club, who were Colwyn Bay's main sort of competition, really. So that didn't go down too well, but obviously I worked in Deeside, I lived in the area, so it made sense, and I didn't have a car, I couldn't travel back to Colwyn Bay all the time on the train just to go training. I had to train with people in Deeside. So basically I joined that club, started training again. Jan and I got married in '83, and then I started running steeplechases again, started running sessions, learned a lot from a guy called Tudor Williams, who was the coach there, and a guy who I knew as a kid when I ran for Clwyd. He was one of the team managers and would often have a chat with me at events that we went to. So another guy who had a lot to get me going and introduced me to different forms of training and stuff like this, and I started to learn a lot more. And then '85, by this time we'd got had our eldest daughter Elizabeth, and we were living in an attic flat in Birkenhead because Jan was working as a teacher in Liverpool, and I was working in Connors Quay. And there's a train route between the two that went through Bidston, where we lived. So she could go into Liverpool, I could go into North Wales, but it wasn't very pleasant. Drafty attic flat, a bit damp, a bit horrible. So we decided that I'd obviously look for a job, and we'd go to wherever I could get a job, and that would either be Colwyn Bay, near to my family, or the Isle of Man, near to Jan's family. And a job came up at St Ninian's High School, went for it and got it. And from that point of view, the rest history. Came to live on the Isle of Man, summer of '85, and very happy living here ever since.
Did you immediately get involved with immediately involved with Manx Athletics when you came over here?
Yeah, basically I'd met a few of the guys because Jan's sister Linda Shimon was married Steve Shimon, who's the you'll know from cycling. And Steve was very friendly with a group of lads who are runners, Dave Ronan, Chris Quine, Jim Anderson. And I would come over and with Jan when we were going out, or when we first got married, I'd go out socially with these guys, go training with them. And then, of course, when we came to live here, I stayed a member of Deeside Athletics Club to begin with, because the Manx clubs weren't doing athletics. They were going away to run national cross country, but they were only running the GRE Cup as it was then. They weren't running a league.
Right.
So I stayed with D-side in 1986. And then in 87, Manx AC, as was then, joined the Northern League. And so I then changed allegiance to Manx AC, which
Right.
later joined with Boundary Harriers to form Manx Harriers in 1992. So originally, that's how I got involved in athletics on Ireland. And of course, this early stage, I was training with a load of guys: Steve Kelly, Dave Newton, Chris Quine, Jim Anderson, Nick Hannay, all these guys. You know, it was a very competitive group. And we did a lot of training with Maurice Herriot, who of course was a steeplechaser,
Right.
Olympic silver medalist. So obviously that was something that encouraged me to join that group and get myself to train as often as I could. And of course then picked up a whole host of more experience with training sessions and things that you could do to help make yourself quicker from the point of view of hurdling, etc., etc. And of course, this was a time when there was no track on the Isle of Man, so we were training on roads, on hills, on grass tracks, etc. But you know, it didn't stop us running fast. So yeah.
You help and train others at this stage, coaching others.
Yeah, well, in 1987, it was January. I sort of identified that, you know, we were all doing all this training to get ready for the national cross country and other cross countries in England, but we weren't doing any core work, circuit training type stuff. We weren't doing anything like that at all. So I set up a session in 1987, and I still run that session every winter. Last one finished just before, well, it didn't finish. It finished abruptly because obviously the COVID-19 pandemic caused all training to stop. But basically, I've run that session however many years it is since, still running it now.
So I mean, looking at the kind of race results through I suppose the next 10 years and beyond that, there's so many to pick through. Maybe I mean, those certain maybe sort of late 80s, early 90s, which ones stand out to you for your performances?
Late 80s, I think I have to say, winning the Island Games 10,000 meters in the Faroes.
Right.
Firstly, because it was my second Island Games. I went in 1987, and I ran 5K and 10K. Graham Clark won both, and I got silver in the 10 and bronze in the 5. And you know, I was really happy with that. But in 1989, I was running pretty well. I'd had a few issues. My father passed away in the Easter of that year. He died very young, really, and it was kind of a difficult time in that sense. I'd also had a couple of injuries, niggly injuries, which had sort of slowed my training down. And Chris Quine and I, around about Easter, embarked on about 12 weeks of kamikaze training. We were either going to be totally fit or we were going to be completely injured or shattered come the Island Games. And the answer was we were very fit come the Island Games. So I'd run a couple of couple of track races on grass. Chris had run something like, I can't remember now, 157 or 156 on grass for 800. I'd run 2 minutes 0.1. You know, it wasn't really my event, but I had a good turn of pace, obviously, for a 10,000 meter runner, what I was aiming for. Chris ran the 15 and the 5 in the games and won a gold and a silver, and no, did he run? I'm trying to think now. I can't remember now. Chris did he run that? Anyway, I can't remember, but Chris ran it. He ran the 15, and I think he ran the 5. Anyway, I ran he won the 5 and he got the silver in the 15. I won the 10 and got the bronze in the 5. But I set the Island Games record as was in that 10K final. And the other thing about it was, on the track, Graham Clark was basically almost seen as unbeatable on the Isle of Man to a degree. Certainly over 5K, 10K, Graham just had this knack of being able to turn the screw and win the race. He was a very, very good athlete who potentially perhaps could have achieved even more, but had a few issues with injuries and stuff like this, which perhaps got in the way. And he probably wasn't at his best in 1989. But I beat Graham in a sprint finish, last 400 metres in that particular 10K. And of course, Gordon Crowe ran the Island Games 100 metres record that day with about a 6 metre per second wind behind him. We ran into that 25 times.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was, I mean, that's another day when everything just went to plan. I remember at halfway, the time being shouted out, and it wasn't particularly quick. And I just remember thinking, this is easy. It's so easy. In fact, I almost smiled. I tried to stop myself because I didn't want anyone to see that I was feeling confident. You know what I mean? I wanted to keep that inside. And, you know, they could find out in the last 2K or the last 800 how confident I was. And it all kind of went to plan.
And the representative of the island and the anthem and that, is that something that does make your hair stand up? Yeah. I sing the anthem, or I have. Well, I haven't done an Island Games medal ceremony for a long time for myself, but no, I sang the anthem every time. In fact, in the Faroes, Dave Anderson, who was in the team at the time, doing 400 hurdles and 800, Dave gave us all the words, a little piece of paper with the words. I made sure I learned them so I could sing the anthem in years to come, which I've been able to do. One of the other notes down here was the record holder for the 1500 chase.
Oh yeah, well yeah, I still hold the Isle of Man 3,000 metre steeplechase record, 9:18.5. I wouldn't say it's the fastest in the world. Obviously, it's not. But you know, I ran that in a Northern League race at Stanley Park in Blackpool. I was probably about 20 seconds ahead of the next guy, but it was another one of those days where everything just clicked and I just ran out my skin on that day. And then I also ran the same year, actually, ran a 1500 metre steeplechase as a bit of a warm-up event. And I ran 4:18 point something. You know, you can ask any sort of senior distance runners, you know, what's it like running under 4:20 for 1500 meters? Well, stick 17 hurdles in as well and have a go at doing it. And
yeah.
You know, I can hold a fast pace for a period of time. I wasn't able to hold it as long as some on, say, 10K or half marathon on the road. But I could do it for a reasonable time on the track.
Yeah. So you also won half marathon medals as well at the games. That was something else.
Yeah, they were all team medals. So I think my sort of best position was about 5th or 6th, something like that, in Island Games half marathon. So I was always a decent team player, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I won 4 golds and 1 silver in teams, and I think I counted in 3 of the teams and was the third non-scoring runner for 2 of the teams. But you still count to a degree because you're adding to the scores of the other runners by finishing in front of them, even if you're not in your first 2 for your team. So it's all sort of grist to the mill, helping the team go on and be successful.
Yeah, right. And for maybe slightly my own ego, you were going to mention about the 95 games, and part of the reason I ask as well is because I was at that games.
Yeah.
Story about 95.
Didn't you do a lot of work on the front for the team? And
I'd like to think so, but ask them, they'll probably say different. But let's go with that story for the moment. That's fine.
I remember a picture of you, and you were sort of grimacing really badly, and guys
probably were the race, to be honest.
Your hamstrings because you'd completely frozen or something.
I remember the road race was horrendous. It was early morning, but yeah, it was just. I mean, I was only young then. I was like 18 and probably in reality out of my depth. But yeah, it was. Yeah, I just remember it being hot as well again because it was down in Jib. Something a pasty Manx boy. It wasn't. wasn't for the conditions for me.
No, as for me, it was similar. I ran the steeplechase and I ran the half marathon there. Looking back now, I should have run the no, not the steeplechase. What did I say? I ran the 10K and the half marathon there. I should have run the steeplechase, but I didn't, because I didn't have a water jump. So in my head, it's not a proper steeplechase.
Right.
So I'm not doing it. So I basically did the half and the 10, and the 10 was the first event. It might have been the same day that you did the road race, because it was brutally hot. It was something like 38 degrees. There was literally no shade on the track. We'd had advice about hydration, etc. And I think I'd perhaps taken it too far. I just drank loads and copious amounts of water. Whether I'd washed all the minerals out of my system, I don't know. But I really struggled in the latter half of the race. And there's a few funny stories with it. But anyway, I struggled. And the guy who won the race, Kim Gottfredson, he was off. I think he lapped everybody in the race.
Wow.
I was basically running for second place with the guy. I came third in the end, but there was this guy with me from Gotland. Can't remember his name now. Basically, I was trying to get away from him, and I was working hard all the way to try and escape, and he was managing to hang on. I can remember it was in the days when they were very strict about water, and you weren't allowed to have water that you could drink in the race on the track. They didn't do water; they did it on the road in marathons, but not on the track. So, but they said that they would give us sponges. So I can remember they given us these sponges after halfway. So I remember thinking, I'm absolutely gasping for a drink. So I remember thinking I'd sponge my head and then I'd run around, and I got another sponge. I thought, right, I'm just going to suck the sponge. So I sucked the sponge, and it was soapy. It's
oh, lovely, nice.
Obviously what they've been using to wash their cars. So that's the Island Games, isn't it, for you back in the early days? But anyway, yeah. So I can remember what I remember is with about 2 laps to go, 600 meters to go, me thinking, right, use those arms, really work those arms. My runners, or people I coach will know, I say this sort of stuff to them. I was really trying to work these arms, really trying to work hard, break this guy. And actually, he obviously ran away from me at some point. I don't remember the last lap of the race. Right. I finished the race, collapsed over the line, ended up being taken to hospital. Anyway, I recovered, and I basically ran the half marathon 4 days later.
Wow.
And came about 7th and ran okay. I was happy enough in the run, and we won the gold, team gold, and won the race overall. But the joke was about I think the day before the half marathon, or 2 days before, so a couple of days after the men's 10K, it was the women's 10K, and the race was on, and it was sort of going around the track, etc. We were watching the race. Can't even remember who won it and how it went. But what I do remember is they were putting the hurdles out for one of the hurdles finals in the home straight. And they got the hurdles out, and they just left the first 3 lanes open for the runners in the 10K to go by. And the joke going around the Manx team was, if they'd done that for the men's 10K, I'd have never finished, because I was across all the lanes going down to finish, so I'd have been crashing into hurdles and everything else. So it's a good job they didn't do that for the men's 10K.
Yeah. I mean, clearly a great pedigree, and obviously that continues. You talk about many or all the steeplechase records on the Isle of Man through the vets categories as well. You then represented the GB in the vets later on, jumping into 2000s here. So see that pedigree of training and racing just through the age categories continued.
Yeah, basically, I learned a lot at Gibraltar about myself, really, because you can force yourself to do anything, it proves. And I also learned that you go on holiday, whether you go in there to have a lovely time on the beach with your family, you take your kit and you go out when it's hot and you do a bit of running, because you need to get used to it, because athletics is a summer sport, and even in the UK it can get very hot. So I've always done that since, and actually You know, I've actually done well in hot races since then, because I've learned an awful lot, especially and about hydration and how to take the right stuff, not just any old stuff to try and rehydrate, etc. But yeah, going on to into the veteran years, I won the Vets UK Vets Championships in 2000, and basically I was top ranked over 40 vet for 4 years.
Right.
Then in 2005, I went to the World Championships. I came 4th or 5th there. Very hot day. But that wasn't the reason. It's because it was early September, and I'd gone there with the family, and we had a holiday. Then I ran the steeplechase, and then we came back home, and I went to work, because it was work kind of about 2 days later. And it wasn't the right way to go about running a veterans championships, because obviously I was tired from the whole season, never mind the fact I'd had a week on the beach before running a race. Next year I went to the Euro champs, and I said, right, I'm going there to run a race. So I went there 2 days before just to acclimatise and have a look round, ran the race, came back the day after.
And you won bronze there.
Bronze there, yeah, and it was in quite a big race with the local favourite, Polish guy, Lankuki, his surname is. I don't know if I've said that correct, Stanislav Lankuki, and basically he just got past me on a sprint finish. I was in 3rd place at the bell. I was in 4th place going into the water jump, which is about 150 meters before the finish. I got up into 2nd place just before the final hurdle, and then I was 3rd place crossing the line. So it was backwards and forwards. Yeah. I feel a bit sorry for the German guy, because he was chasing this Spanish guy who we all knew was really good. Went off too hard, and on his last lap he went from 2nd to about 6th.
All right.
He went backwards. So, but yes.
Quite good memory of the races.
That race, then.
You have quite good memory of races. Does that tend to just stick in the memory? Just think about my own experience. I have none. Yeah.
Races and times and stuff like that tend to stick in the memory quite well. Sometimes get a bit confused, but usually in the right area, if not too exact. So I know in that race I ran 10:16, which wasn't that quick. But then it was about 38 degrees, and it was in Poland, but it was absolutely boiling. And again, there was no shade, so you had to warm up in the hot sun, etc. So I ran a fairly conservative start to the race, but I finished like a train. Unfortunately, the local Polish guy did as well. But yeah, I noticed that he ran the world champs. As an over 60, he's about a year older than me, last year or the year before, and he won it in 7:14. So I've been basically from about the age of 40, 48. Yeah, I had a lot of muscle problems, hamstring issues, had some calf issues, had a knee problem. So I do about 6 months training, then I'd be injured for 3 months, then I'd get about 3 months training in, then I'd be injured for 6 months, and it went like that for about 8 or 9 years. So I lost a bit of form, really. It also sort of fitted in with the time when my career in teaching, I became a deputy head in 2001, and then I became a head teacher in 2009. So it was kind of that kind of extra pressure with work. Was actually I probably wasn't looking after myself well enough in between training, so I was getting injuries. So
I was going to ask a little bit about those injuries. I mean, aside from, you use the word getting on in age, but naturally as we all get older, we're more likely to pick up injuries. But you talked earlier in your career about often training hard. By this time, had you started balancing that training and knowing when to train, when to rest, or were you still always a go hard type of trainer? And therefore that impact those injuries?
Yeah, I've always been someone who's trained on the track. So I've always been someone who's trained fast.
Right.
And that has been what I think, when I was running well, enabled me to run at a good standard. But obviously, if the muscles and the joints and the tendons and ligaments are getting a bit stiffer and a bit tireder, and you're trying to run fast, then potentially you're going to damage something or pull something. And I think I was doing that a bit too often, and I'm probably getting a bit carried away. I'd do a couple of good sessions, feel like everything was coming together, and then I'd overstep the mark and end up, hurting myself or whatever, and there'd be a problem. So, few situations like that, really.
I think most, I can't speak for Matty, but well, I'm sure you're the same as well, Matty, where you do, and sometimes you certainly feel like you feel like you're getting form as well, and natural instincts to train harder, to think, oh, I can build on this, and to have that mental switch to go, no, I actually need to back off here.
Yeah.
Other go agains.
Yeah. I have to say, I've done it myself, where you want to keep pushing yourself, and then next minute you're not listening to your body, and then suddenly you're out for however long, and then you think, oh, should have probably, when my body was warning me, listen to it. But as you said, it's kind of comes sometimes with that mentality of wanting to push yourself in that competitive environment.
Yeah, so I agree, and I'm always saying to my athletes, listen to your body. In fact, to my athletes, I'm quite often saying, "Oh, you don't need to do that. Have a break, or have a day off, or do an easier session." And they're probably quite mad with me sometimes, but on the other hand, I know that sometimes that's the best advice, because athletes are going to push themselves hard no matter what, because they want to do well. They're competitive people. So actually giving yourself a bit of a break from time to time is a really good thing.
Yeah.
Because you can overdo it.
And just obviously, you mentioned the teaching there and through the years and moving up. Was that obviously teaching gave you a lot of satisfaction, I guess, as a job career?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. When I did that teacher training, the first teaching practice, my thoughts were, oh, what have I let myself in for? And then the second teaching practice, which was like the longer one, which is where you really kind of find your feet. I just loved it, really. And that was me. I started working, I say, quite a hard school. But, I rose to that challenge, and I think I did well there. And then I came over to the Isle of Man at St Ninians, and I was very lucky I worked in the same school on the Isle of Man for my whole career. I didn't go to other schools. Other people have to move from place to place. I never planned to be anything more than a teacher. It just opportunities came up, and I thought, well, I think I could do that. And I applied, and obviously people thought, well, yes, you could do that, and I got the position, and I moved on. So it was never. I know some people are very career orientated, and I've got to be a senior teacher or an assistant head by this age, and then I've got to be a deputy head by that age, and a head teacher by this age. I never ever thought I would be a head teacher. It's something that developed over time, and I'm glad that it did. I've enjoyed every role that I've had in my teaching career. Good.
And so let's dig into coaching. So obviously that's a big part of what you've done and what you do now. So maybe looking at the early looking back on your career and going, who had big impacts on you to coach you, and how you then, perhaps they inspired you to the way you coach now.
Yeah, it was obviously the two teachers, Mr. Evans and Mr. Cuffin. They sort of showed an interest, which perhaps other people hadn't done, and that was something that kind of, it's something that is such a beautiful thing about teaching. If you can show an interest, it's amazing what kids can do. They just suddenly, they realise someone's interested in them and wants them to do well, and it's not just their mum or dad; it's someone else. Right. And that kind of can, so I kind of see teaching and coaching as the same thing, really. So I still see that in a way I'm still teaching. It's just I'm doing it all through coaching now. Whereas before I did a bit of coaching and a bit of teaching and a bit of competing. But, you know, and I see the same with my parents, really, with their work in youth work and all that sort of thing. You know, they were teaching to a degree as well, because, you know, you're working with young people and setting a good example and showing them ways that they might like to live their lives. And you know, hopefully that's something that they respond to and react to, and then are inspired by and go on and do great things, whatever that might be. And I always had the belief that in school, every kid had something that they could do. Okay, some of them might be extremely frustrating and annoying or whatever, but everybody had something that they could do, that they could take forward and they could achieve. And, you know, I'm sort of, I just look back now at the number of people who are back on island who, you know, are head teachers themselves who I used to teach, or guys who work in shops or in bars, and they'll have a chat with me and say hello or whatever, and we'll have a chat about who they are and where they're going, because obviously I can't remember everybody's name. But you know, it's just lovely. It's brilliant, and in a way, that's what I've tried to bring to coaching. You know, it's as important to me, the guy who turns up, wants to do a bit of keep fit and get a bit fitter and stronger, and maybe becomes a bit of a runner who's decent, as someone who might have aspirations to represent the UK on the track or over cross country. And obviously I'm lucky enough to have helped people to do all of those things.
One of our earlier mini pods we did with you, we talked about the Foxy Challenge. Rather than digging into that again, people can go back and listen to that. But I think one of the things, if I'm not correct, ultimately for you, for athletes, is about participation and that enjoyment of the sport itself.
Yeah.
Whether it's athletics or not, I guess, but obviously primarily for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I think enjoyment, fun has got to be a big part of it. So the guys who are in my training group, when we train hard, but we also have a bit of fun as well. So if you're going down the track and you're doing a hard session, or you're doing a cross-country session on sort of off-road, there's no reason why you can't have a laugh at the same time. Because at the end of the day, you know, you're going to put yourself through it no matter what, and then you're hopefully going to see the benefits of that when you go to your race. But it should be fun as well. So what I've tried to do for the guys on the Foxy Challenge is to try and give them a variety of sort of training principles and training sessions to keep that fun element going, rather than it just being going out for a run like I was doing when I was 16. I
was going to say, I wonder whether that enjoyment part was perhaps brought in for something that you didn't necessarily experience yourself when you were younger. It was more just
I enjoyed running, but it was more about competition for me. So I think, you're right. Possibly a little bit more now. You know, a bit more of a mature attitude to it all, really. But you did say about the coaches that have influenced me, and obviously people that, like I mentioned, Richard and Arthur and Tudor in North Wales, Morris when I first came to the island. But a guy who was one of the guys at the tutors at my I've gone through about 4 or 5 reorganisations of UK athletics coaching. So every so often you have to go back and take the course again, even though you've been doing it for so many years or whatever. And one of the last times I did that, this guy called Jeremy Harries, who was the Lancashire team manager at the time, who I knew as an athlete because I was running for Lancashire. And I was watching him at the coaching course and watching him with athletes, and I thought, that's the kind of coach I want to be. So we're talking about the early 2000s here. And then I went to a British Milers Club course early on as well at Loughborough, and George Gandy, who's one of the top distance coaches in Britain. And it was really inspiring listening to him. And then another guy, Merrick Bousfield, unfortunately passed away a few years ago now. The likes of Trevor Christian, others will know Merrick really well. Merrick was a thrower. Right. Basically, I got to know Merrick well because we didn't have someone at the time when I was team manager of the Isle of Man to help us with our throws athletes. So I got Merrick to come over and do some coaching and things like this. And then he also took on a role as assistant team manager at 2005 Island Games. And basically, he just had such a really calm way with his athletes. And I thought, again, that's the kind of coach I want to be. I don't want to be someone who's shouting and jumping up and down. And I want to be someone who can put across the message, get it done in a sensible way, but above all, keep things calm and in perspective. So those guys, really learned a lot from them. And I would say I learned a lot from other guys in athletics who I trained with, people like Chris Quine. Chris knows an awful lot about athletics and training, and really got a good result out of himself. His own experiment of one with himself as an athlete. He got a really good result out of himself over time. So learnt a lot from him as well.
I'd imagine, part of being ultimately a good coach is keeping open-minded to don't think you know everything and continue to learn off other people. Up until the day you're not doing it.
I agree there wholeheartedly. I mean, I don't know. I kind of feel that sometimes I'm not a very good coach. I feel that quite a lot of introspection, looking at what I do. I'm thinking about how I can do things differently and better. Why did I do it like that? I shouldn't have done that. I should have done it this way. So, because there's always been that part of me which has been fairly quiet and sort of introverted and looking at what's going on before sort of stepping out there. And so, I mean, it wasn't necessarily easy to agree to have the podcast, although probably thinking I can't stop talking, but once I get going, it's hard to stop. But yes, so I just think that side of your character is really important, though, because it means that you analyse things, evaluate things, and that's what you have to do. Look at what went well, look at what didn't go well, take the good bits out, don't get hung up over the bad bits, move on. And when I was a kid, I got hung up over the bad bits.
Yeah, right. I think that looking and reflecting on your own performance, ultimately, even if it's as a coach, it's like anything. It's like business, relationships, anything. You have to look back and see what lessons you can learn to do whatever that is better. I don't think I think that's something essential to people. I think if you just go around in this bubble of, well, I did it right and that's it, and not learn, then you're not bettering yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So look
sorry.
No, you go.
A lot of the the reason for really pushing the coaching, I'd been doing coaching in the 90s, and we said before, started one session in 1987. Around about, it was Guernsey Games in 2003. I think the Isle of Man only won 2 distance running medals, and they were won by athletes who were over the age of 40. Jackie Ashman, I think it was, won, I can't remember now, say 1,500, 5,000 or 5,000, 10,000, something like that. And myself won bronze in the steeplechase. And it was fairly obvious that we had to do something because, the sport was not, we weren't producing the athletes. So it was around that kind of time that kind of got involved in doing this. And I suppose also around the time that, I was moving into veteran athletics, and whilst I was still fairly competitive at Island Games level, it was only going to be there for a matter of time, really. I wasn't going to be able to hold that ability for an awful lot longer. So that's when the coaching kind of really kicked in, I would say.
Yeah, so looking at that, so you won Coach of the Year in 2004. Was that a surprise to you at the time, or was that?
Yes. No. I mean, there were professional coaches on the Isle of Man in swimming and I think gymnastics and other things like this, and they could easily perhaps have taken that award, and maybe they did other years. I've been nominated lots of times, but I won it on that particular occasion. Obviously, I had an athlete at the time who was, a top-notch athlete, or he wasn't a top-notch athlete perhaps in people's eyes initially, but obviously people realised that he was, and that was Keith Gerrard. Yeah. So I had a group of young athletes who were training with me, and Keith went on. We were going to national cross countries and things like this, and I never ever thought that I would take an athlete to a national cross country and that they would win a medal. But then to actually go and win a national cross country, because Keith won it in 2005 as a junior when I was coaching him. You know, Keith won a bronze, silver, and gold in different national cross countries when I was working with him, and also then go and compete in the European Championships, representing Britain and win medals as in the team, and also be Britain's top finisher in the world cross country as an under 20. You know,
for you as a coach, that satisfaction of that, how does that rank to competing yourself? Do you get more out of that, or similar?
I would say probably the highest thing, the most satisfaction for me was Keith winning the junior national cross country championships in 2005.
We chatted to Keith earlier on one of the early pods. He was good enough to dial in from the States. So, have you got any funny or stories you'd hate to hear in public?
Well, I can think of a few that would be very embarrassing, but I won't go down those lines.
Somewhere in the middle. Ending up without any trainers or something like that.
No, I mean, basically, Keith was always he was very dedicated to his training, very hardworking, and obviously had a natural aptitude and wanted to make the most of that. We all have a natural aptitude for something, which I've said before is my belief with all kids, really. But he's definitely had one for distance running, and you know, I would say that was his biggest advantage, that he was determined to make the most of it. Funny stories. I remember going to
sorry, Keith,
a race. It's not that funny in a way, but we went to this particular race in London. It was the London Cross Country Championships, and it was being used. They didn't have a proper trial for the Euro Champs, and it was being used as a trial. So I took Keith down there to run in this race. Now, he didn't run particularly well in that race, and I can't even remember whether he made it into the GB team. He did in other years, but this particular year didn't go particularly well. I don't think he was feeling that well, actually, on the day of the race. But anyway, the point is, we'd done the race. It wasn't brilliant, but it was okay. We can learn from it. Back to the hotel, and it's in London. We were staying near Russell Square in quite a nice hotel. Got quite a good deal, and basically said to Keith, so we had the Saturday night, and you know, Keith is basically teetotal, which is great for an athlete. And we sort of said, well, we went out for a meal, and sort of said, okay, well, we'll go to a couple of pubs. I'll just have a couple of beers, and we'll have a chat, and then we'll head back, and then we're on the plane early home tomorrow. He's about 18 at the time, something like this. So yeah, fine. So we went out, and we were in this particular pub, and we're at the bar, and we're talking away about athletics and whatever. And all these people were staring at us, and I was thinking, what are you staring at us for? What's going on? And then the barmaid comes up, and she goes to Keith, are you a jockey? They all thought that there's this small guy who looked really fit and whatever. They all thought he was a jockey. So he's getting all these questions about, was he a jockey? And of course, you have to say, no, he's a distance runner, blah, blah, blah. Because, of course, jockeys have to be careful with their weight and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not very funny, really, but it was a bit of a laugh at the time.
Yeah. No, it was an interesting chat we had with him. I must say, I didn't know his background or even his pedigree. He's not really, certainly during a lot of his years, never really followed Manx sport, but yeah, certainly an impressive CV, sure.
Yeah. Of course, he went on to St Mary's University, where he trained with people like a guy called Nick Woods. I was kind of nominally coaching Keith in his first year at uni, and then he moved on to kind of UK athletics coaches, worked with Nick Woods for a while, then a guy called Nick Anderson. He did very well with Nick Anderson, and then he moved obviously to the USA and worked with Art Acevo. Maybe got the name slightly wrong there, but yeah. So of course, even then, I mean, Keith was going away to America, training hard, and then he'd come back to the UK, and he would go and run in the national cross country or the intercounties, and he'd stay with the Manx Harriers team and he'd be on our bus to and from the races.
Yeah, right.
So he won 2 nationals as a senior, and we had the trophy on our bus. Oh yeah, there's a funny story. And there was on one occasion, Keith couldn't come back to the Isle of Man straight away, so we had to go back to the Isle of Man, and he said, would we take the trophy back for him?
Right.
So we said, yeah, we'll take the trophy back. So we had the trophy with us. We had to look after it, and Johnny was looking after it on this particular coach journey or whatever. And we had the trophy out, and we were like holding it up, sort of thing. And it got put down on the side, and then the coach went round a fairly sharp corner, and the trophy went flying and hit the floor. And we were all like, "Oh no!" Because it's about 100 and something years old. This trophy. Luckily, it wasn't damaged, and very quickly got put away into its box. Look after it better in future. But
yeah, maybe Keith should have kept it on him. So, I mean, young athletes now, or athletes coming through of the guys you see with them athletics, I'm sure there's many you could name, but who kind of stands out on the local scene?
Well, I mean, guys who are training now and are sort of under 20s or seniors, obviously David Malarkey's a guy who I helped for about 3 to 4 years. He's now working with Adam Henderson in Leeds. He's been with Adam, I think, 2 years now. And David was breaking some of Keith's records for the shorter distances, like 1500 meters, etc., on island with me. He's now moved on again there. So David is someone, I think, such a shame for him, because it would have been a good year for him to run some fast times this summer, I think. But maybe we'll see him doing that next summer. I'm sure he's dedicated and training hard. I know it's the sort of lad he is. Rachel Franklin, obviously I coached Rachel for something like 7 years, and in that period she's gone from a very good athlete to multi-medal winning Island Games athlete, multi-medal winning athlete in Northern Championships, representing running in the British Championships, running numerous Manx records over many different distances. We've parted ways fairly recently, but I've got a lot of time for Rachel. She's someone who works exceptionally hard and is very dedicated to her training, and I'm sure she will go on and perform really well over time in the future. I'm coaching a group of youngsters, mixtures of ages between 11 and 15. I'm not going to mention any names there because I don't want to put any pressure on them. I want them to enjoy what they're doing. I want them to go on and be fantastic athletes. But they might be fantastic athletes who do this or do that. They just might not be as good as this person or that person in someone's eyes, and that doesn't matter, so long as they are happy and they enjoy what they're doing. So I don't want to mention the younger ones, but what I would say is that we have got some very good youngsters at the moment, and I'd like to think that some of those guys will come through. And the thing that I'm really happy about is that some of these guys are interested in the steeplechase.
Right.
I used
you
to
haven't forced that down their throat, have you, Andy?
No, I've not forced it. I just sort of said, it's another event. Have you given it? And have you given it any thought? So we've done a few hurdle sessions, and we would have been doing some 1500 steeplechases this summer for them. But of course, that's not happened. So maybe next summer, perhaps.
So I've got a question and a statement. The question around, I suppose, sport in general. Do you see, youngsters getting into sport and doing sport as kind of part of a bedrock of learning about just life skills, I guess, within the sport environment?
Yeah, I think sport is, it's closely related to life in many ways. I mean, yes, some people win the lottery, and some people are very lucky and are born with, and inherit a lot of money or whatever. But most of us don't. What we get out of life is what we put into it. If we put a good effort into it, we'll get a good life out the other end. That tends to be what happens. And in most sports, it's the same. And I would say definitely athletics and distance running, it's the same. If you put the effort in and you work hard, you get the results. If you
cut corners,
shortcuts.
Yeah.
There aren't any.
Yeah.
It's down to hard work.
And the other thing was just really, I suppose, and I'm sure, obviously, winning the the coaching award a number of years ago, but I do find it interesting. And when Matt and I first talked about doing a podcast, it was talking about people, one, with clearly very good athletic ability, but also willing to spend their own time and their own effort to also leave a legacy, which I'm sure, or I'd like to think you get a lot of thank yous for that within people around the sport. I suppose it's important, although I've obviously never run, thankfully, with my knees, but certainly from a sports side of it, guys like yourself, without that, a lot of these sports wouldn't even happen, let alone produce good athletes. So yeah, I suppose it's just a thanks from everyone, I guess, who you've ever helped.
Yeah, I mean, people are very, very, very nice. They do say thank you, and I mean, at the end of the day, sometimes you think, why am I doing this? Because occasionally, we all get a bit down, don't we? But at the end of the day, I love helping people to progress and develop, and that was my career in teaching. That's been my own sort of aim as a sports person and an athlete, and that's my aim as a coach. And I think in the notes I sent you, I quoted a guy called Percy Cerity. Yep. I think he's overstating it when he says, I'm not interested in athletics, because he obviously was. He was an athletic. Yeah. I'm interested in progress. Fix your goal and work for it. And this guy...
And you like
Yeah. And he coached a guy called Herb Elliott. And Herb Elliott was an Olympic champion, 1,500 meter runner. But the thing about Herb Elliott is that he was unbeaten in his whole career over 1,500 and the mile.
All right.
Obviously, he ran something like 3 minutes 34 in 1960. You'd possibly get to the Olympics running 3 minutes 34 now.
Right.
So it shows you what a fantastic runner he was, and obviously what a fantastic coach Percy Cerity was. So I kind of feel that sort of sums it up in a way.
Yeah.
I love seeing people progress, and the way to do that is a bit of organisation. It's not rocket science. Think it through, bit of variety, have some fun along the way, work hard, and you'll get there in the end.
I mean, I'd not like to one-up him, but I'm undefeated in the 1,500 and the mile as well. But I've never run one. So I suppose the plane's not quite as good.
Well, okay. Yeah. Obviously, he had plenty of people sort of challenging him.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? There's so many stories in athletics, and I think in any sport you could find it in cycling as well, where you can look at individuals and what they've achieved and take great inspiration from it. Yeah. And I've always done that with sport in general. My wife thinks I'm just mad. She's not interested in sport at all.
Right.
She sort of pretends she's interested in what I'm doing, but no,
they're not. No.
Even then, she's not that bothered really, as long as I'm happy. Yeah, so in the house, if there's any free time and I've got the telly to myself, sports on.
Cool.
So whatever it is, yeah.
Well, thanks for your time today, Andy. It's been much appreciated. For those listeners, if you go back a few episodes, you'll find a mini podcast about the Foxy 5K Challenge, and that'll give you some more information on how to get involved and how to get active again. It's not about ability or what you want to do. It's just about participation and a healthier lifestyle. So again, thanks for your time.
No problem.
Do you want to check us out, Matt?
Yeah, so wherever you're watching or listening today, please like, subscribe, share, and leave those 5-star reviews, pretty please. Social media, Facebook, we're the M-Word Podcast. Twitter, we're Manx Sports Pod. And on Instagram, we are the M-Word IOM.
Thanks again, guys. Thanks for letting us get in your sexy ears. It's a word out from Martin.
And word out from Matt.